I came to Canada about 21 years ago. I made the mistake of marrying someone who lived here. I never thought of being an immigrant. To me, that was not ambition. I was very happy in my country of origin, which is Pakistan. But, things happen. So I landed here. And within the first 10 months, I had a baby. So all my grand plans of taking over the world had to be put aside, because there I was in Scarborough, Scarberia, with this little baby and an immigrant woman. What I'm trying to say is that all my politics has come from personal experience. It hasn't come from my academic pursuits. Because when I went to school, they were not too high on either race or gender or anything. I think the closest thing I came to radical politics was somebody taught me Karl Marx at some point, which, quite honestly, coming from a colonized country, didn't make much sense, because it was very Eurocentric and it didn't take into consideration. There was this assumption that colonialism was not really bad. I mean, they still made roads and railways. So, coming from a colonized space, even Marxism had some problems with it. So my politics has developed here in Canada. When I became a mother, I suddenly found myself being a racialized woman. Realized that all the things that I had done, I have a degree in English literature, I have a degree in international relations, I have a degree in international law. And I was doing my PhD in international law and politics. But like I said, it all fell by the wayside. So my politics was developed more by virtue of the fact that my world changed very dramatically. Like, from being a person in my own right, I ended up here as somebody's wife. And my spouse is a nice guy. I mean, he wouldn't dream of oppressing me, even though he's a Muslim. But, I always tell him, if I believe everything I read in Toronto Star and Global Mail and National Post, then as a quintessential Muslim man, you should be oppressing me or throwing bombs. I mean, there isn't much room for any other profession in your life. But needless to say, like I said, the man has tried. He's like, I try oppressing you, but you just refuse to be oppressed. So it's a major problem for him. He can't live up to his Muslim ideals. It was a very disconcerting experience to come from a family where I was the youngest of 3 children. I'm the only daughter. And my father and mother, who are very conservative Muslims, thought because I was the brightest of the 3, they should invest in my education and send me to England and send me to the United States. And so when I come here, and particularly after 9/11, I start hearing how Muslims are Neanderthal people who just oppress their girls and never send them for education and this and that. I'm a little taken aback, because I'm like, I grew up in a Muslim country with very conservative Muslim parents who thought education was a critical component of their children's growth, irrespective of their gender. They never thought that me being a woman was going to stand in the way of me not being able to achieve my ambition. So that was the first awareness that I had, that it didn't matter how well I was raised by my parents. The fact that I got married and moved at the same time automatically marginalized me. So I came to Canada, I can speak English language relatively well. I remember when I first came here, people used to say, you speak English so well. I'm like, yeah, we were colonized for 200 years. Of course I speak English well.
That's perfect.
I probably came out of my mother's womb speaking English, it's all the other languages that I don't speak well. But in spite of all that, it was this great sense of like, I'm alone. I remember I used to walk in the streets of Scarberia and just look around, pushing this, this push, whatever, stroller or whatever, with this little baby in it that I had no idea what to do with, and no desire, quite frankly, to raise either. But eventually I did end up raising him, and he's pretty nice guy. But it was a very disconcerting feeling. And even though my spouse was very accommodating and everything, people used to always look at me and say, "Oh, Mrs. Raza." And I'm like, it's like I have no identity of my own. And I'm not going into this individualistic bullshit that, you know, I have to be my own self. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's just that you have a vision of yourself and you think I'm an individual as a part of a larger collective. Needless, I mean, I'm not denying that, but you still have your visions of your own. And suddenly you just become an extension to somebody else's life. I had no friends here, I had no family here. The only thing that was mine was that child. So, you know, that was and that's where the sense of possession becomes so important in parents when they lose everything, when they lose all their, you know, social supports, their family background, their history. And this is the experience of immigration and refugee experience when you go to another place. The only thing you have to hang on to is your kids, because that's the only thing that you think is mine. Of course, I had to deconstruct that over the years, and you know, to realize that, you know, they're not my possession. Over the years, I've learned that it's a privilege. As a parent, I'm privileged to have children, and I consider myself terribly privileged that I have two spoiled brats who drive me effing insane, trying to tell me that I just don't get it. Today I get a text message from my son saying, "Where are you at 2:30? So I'm like, "At home." So he's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Why do you need to know where I am at 2:30? He's like, "Just keeping tabs on me." I'm like, "What are you, my grandfather?" And then I realized that, of course, the reason he was asking was that he showed up. He's at university at Waterloo, and he was coming home without telling me, so he needed to know I was home. But of course, he's not going to tell me that. He's like, "I'm keeping tabs on you, woman." I'm like, "Okay, thank you for letting me know that." You learn a lot from having children. I have a daughter, 16 years old. I don't know what to say. It's a struggle. I consider myself a survivor. If I survive her, I'll survive any bloody thing. She had a test today on anthropology, which includes psychology and sociology and everything. She's in grade 11. And she comes home and she says, "Do you think I am out of control and emotionally unstable child?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I think you're out of control and unstable." And she's like, "You do realize that's because of your parenting?" I'm like, "Okay, then you're very stable and you're very emotionally secure." And she's like, "Yeah, because I just said that in my exam, that the reason if I'm out of control and I'm unstable is all your fault." It's interesting what I learned from my children. And that's where my politics comes from.